It's a beautiful day in the 90s, sipping some wine, and we've got something really important to talk about today, and that is divorce. It's a tough thing to think about and to deal with, and it could wreck your finances, but why not be prepared? We don't want that to happen to you. And if it's you or you know somebody that's trying to navigate through these waters, we recommend you watch this conversation if you have a house and you're not sure what to do with it. So I'm Lori McIntosh. I'm a realtor, and this is Billy Cunningham. He's a lender.
Everybody, Billy Cunningham, independent mortgage broker. Ask Lender Billy.
That's right. And I wanted to meet with Billy because I have had some clients that are going through this situation, and it's kind of out of my wheelhouse when we talk finances. So I really appreciate you meeting with me, and I wanted to ask you some really important questions.
Let's jump in.
Okay, so these are questions that you would ask before you sign the paper. So I just want to point that out again. And tell me, what are the biggest financial mistakes that people, divorcing couples, make when they're selling their home?
I think the number one thing, and this comes up time and time again, Lori, I probably have this conversation no less than 5 times a month.
That's a lot.
I'm in my 50s. A lot of a lot of my clients, a lot of my
Oh,
peers
they
are
got married
people.
when they're 18.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Still getting divorced, but people don't understand that the family home that they bought together, they're both on that loan. That when they divorce, one of them can't just come off of that loan. They have to either refinance or sell the house. We'll talk more about that, but I think that's the biggest challenge because there's a domino effect from there. It affects so many things.
Right. And I do have a lot of questions to ask you. So you don't have to go in depth because I'll probably get there
Yeah,
on each
sounds good.
one.
Sounds good.
So how soon should couples start talking to you and thinking about speaking with the lender when if they're thinking about separating, they're just not even sure?
Yeah, no, that's a good starting place. So, like I said, 54. Probably the last 10, 12 years, I've been doing a lot of divorce, what I deem divorce loans. And this is my opinion, but I feel like really they should talk to the lender when they know that they've decided to part ways. And the reason, gang, that I feel like you should talk with the lender first, even before you talk with the lawyer, is people just don't understand that the family home, Lori, for most people, that is the biggest asset, and it's going to have a ripple effect on everything else. And depending on the equity, there's usually a spouse that wants to stay there, and they need to understand the rules, the kind of the minefields they have to navigate around with that. So I always say start with your finance guy, and then we're going to work with all the other spokes in the wheel: the realtor, the financial advisor, the lawyers, everyone that you're going to bring in to hopefully navigate you through the process to better ways.
Yes, and I 100% agree with you because I do have a lot of people that just start thinking about the negativity they're experiencing in their home life, and they just want to start looking at houses, and they have no idea what kind of house they could get and what they're eligible for. And you don't want to be looking at houses you can't afford, or you don't want to look at a house that you could upgrade and do much better. So it's so super important to know where you are and work on that pre-approval process like I do
Right.
with other clients that aren't going through this.
Yeah, yeah, and we've seen people where they just start looking at homes. They don't understand how much equity they're going to have, or their spouse, and you're throwing darts in the dark. You're not going anywhere.
Right. And then let's say you mentioned this one spouse wants to stay in the home.
Yeah.
What loan options are available for that?
Sure. So let's take an example. Let's say that I'm going to be very generic. Bob and Tina bought their home 15 years ago. They paid 500,000, and now it's worth, let's say, 1,200,000. So there's about 700,000 in equity. Tina really wants to keep the house. Bob wants to move on, buy his own home. The problem, and this is the one I run into so often, they refinanced during the pandemic. They got this historically low rate. It's in the low threes. Where are we now? We're in the high sixes. And so this is the rub that so many run into because they don't realize that in order to get Bob off of the existing loan and for him to no longer have that obligation, Tina's going to have to refinance. Remember, there's 700,000 in equity, so she owes her husband Bob 350 of that. So now, not only
Mhm.
does she have to refinance out of an amazing rate, but she's got to take on a much bigger loan. And this is why I say I think it's important to talk with a lender because often once I point that out, people realize the person that wants to keep the home, this just isn't viable. I can't take on a bigger loan, and I can't take on a rate that's now double what I currently have. And so that provides some clarity where a lot of people thought, gee, I could hold the home, but often the best solution is to sell and for them to both start over.
Yeah, I've seen that quite a bit.
Yeah.
What if both want to sell? The mortgage, okay, what happens to the mortgage if they both want to sell but one just refuses to cooperate? Maybe they don't want to get divorced and they're just being a pain in the butt, but they both want to sell.
Yeah. I mean, that is usually where the lawyers come in, or if it's mediation and they really have to work that out because,
You're not a therapist.
well, and we're
A
stuck.
little bit.
We're stuck there. But there are things that the where the lawyers can really help. I'll give you an example. So I had somebody this year, and the um, the husband's going to stay on the loan. He's agreed to stay on the loan. He makes a sizable income, so he can qualify to buy another home. But he's on that existing loan with his spouse. So as long as the marital settlement agreement spells out that it's her sole responsibility, he has no obligation, even though he's still on that loan. When he goes to qualify for his home purchase, the lender will be able to exclude that so he doesn't get hit with two housing payments, which is just a neutron bomb for most people. That's what kills their opportunity to buy another property coming out of divorce,
Especially in California, right?
especially in California. Yeah.
I was just like, oh no. Okay, so how does someone qualify to refinance and keep the home on their own? I think you already touched on that, but anything you want to add?
Just they have to be prepared to take on a larger obligation. Uh, there are different levers, if you will, that you can pull. And what I mean by that is let's go back to Bob and Tina. There's $700,000 of equity. Okay.
Yeah, how
Um,
does that get divided up?
but
Like 350.
right, 350 each. But let's say that there's also a a 401k,
Mm-hmm.
or they have joint 401ks and they're worth $1 million. Tina wants to keep the house. She may say, you know what, that 350, I'm not going to refinance because I've got this amazing low interest rate. How about I give you 350 out of our retirement plan, and that all can be worked out with the legal representation with the lawyers. And so I've seen that, and that can be a path that works out for both.
That's good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Are there any loans for people that they could get starting out after they're divorced, so they're no longer a married couple, they're single, not a first-time home buyer, and like
Yeah.
what's available for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no gotchas or special conditions. They're really just starting out and qualifying as if they're buying, for the first time. So,
Okay, so
um,
they've never bought a house by themselves. Let's just say that they're solo now and
right.
they've always been a couple. Is there anything they need to know that's different?
Well, I'm of the philosophy that we never want to treat people with assumptions that they know what we know, right? And so, the dynamic sometimes in a spousal relationship, one partner does all of the house stuff, or they were the one that drove the home purchase. And so, I think it's important to my philosophy is blank slate, tabula rasa. Treat that person like they don't know anything because you may be, to your point, you may be starting from ground zero, and you have to educate a buyer because their spouse did it, or it's been 20 years. And for a lot of people, 20 years, they don't remember what they did.
And honestly, I mean, it's the same for someone that lost a spouse, becomes a widow or a widower. Same thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a process that involves a lot more hand holding. They're going through the grieving process. They're really having a hard time focusing on what they want to buy. And that's where I think the best realtors and lenders are really in tune because someone may say, well, gee, I've always had a big house, and someone's grieving and they're not realizing, you know what, I need to be in a small space. I need to downsize. I don't have the help. I don't have kids that live nearby. So all these factors, and I know those are things that you think about when you're talking with people.
Mm-hmm. That's true. What about someone that now has to pay child support or alimony? and they
Yeah,
got to factor those payments in for their mortgage approval.
you do, and for a lot of people, once again, they're just not thinking of this when the conversations are first starting with divorce. So, let's take the spouse. We'll go back to Tina and Bob. Uh, you know, Tina's going to keep the home, but Bob is going to buy something else, and he's going to have the kids. So now Tina not only has to give him equity, she has to give him child support or alimony if that comes into play. So all of this, as I say, as a lender, it goes into the blender, and we've got to make sure that somebody can still qualify. So, once again, this is why I say start with the lender, because I see people, unfortunately, divorce, as we know, can be very contentious, and they start with the lawyers and they start battling before, honestly, they really know what they're battling over. They don't understand the process. They don't understand, okay, there is a way to navigate out of this house. Like I gave the example, there's a big 401k. We can use that and we can help put the fire out with the house.
Yeah, I feel like if someone is going through this, and you do find a good lender that cares and has that ability to kind of play the therapist role, and just know all your options, will give you so much peace of mind versus just going in blind and waiting and not really listening. And attorneys don't may not even know all the options for you. You know, they're doing their thing, so out of their wheelhouse.
Right.
What are some absolute financial don'ts that someone should not do when they're going through divorce? And let's say there's a sale going in progress,
Sure. No new credit. That's one of the biggest ones. Don't have your credit run.
but all your credit cards are joint, and you want your own credit card.
You do, but I would just kind of I tell people when you're starting the divorce process, think of your credit as on freeze until you have formed a plan. We really want to be careful about the sequence because let's say before you got divorced or decided to get divorced, uh, you bought a motorcycle and you bought a boat, and all these times your credit was getting pinged. It was dinging your scores. And you're right on a critical level where it's really important, okay, you were a 740, now you're a 699, or you're right about to go below 700. That's going to impact your interest rate that's available. Doesn't matter
Hmm.
which lender, all lenders price using FICO brackets. And so freezing your credit, not being rash and making any purchases. I see this a lot, and this ties into the credit. Well, I'm upset with my soon to be ex spouse, and screw it. I'm going to go buy a new Mercedes. Seen it happen. All of a sudden, you don't realize, okay, this is going to be included in my debt. Oh, gee, I didn't think of this. This is going to impact my ability to qualify for my new home purchase. I can't go back. I can't give the car back now, or if I do, I'm going to take a loss. So, I think as emotional as it is, not making rash decisions. That's the big thing.
Or he never got me those diamond earrings from Tiffany's. I'm gonna go
Exactly.
get them now.
Yeah. Yeah. Stranger things have happened.
I
Yeah.
don't know if there's a Tiffany's credit card, but don't even tell me. I don't want to know.
Oh, I guarantee there is. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's say you're in the middle of a divorce. It's not final. Can you buy a house?
You can. You can. Yeah, I've done that many times.
Okay.
Hmm. So what often happens is that before the divorce is final, I'd say most folks these days they are working with mediators, just because if it becomes a full-blown legal battle with lawyers, it's more expensive for both sides. Mediation is definitely less expensive. So what we need as the lender, and this is important to understand, is we need the signed, executed marital settlement agreement, also known as the MSA, that spells out that basically the dissolution of the assets. It says, okay, who gets what? Okay, this is, Tina's going to keep the home and she is solely responsible for the mortgage. And so that way, Bob can now buy a house. And when he goes and talks with his lender, they say, well, you have this other house. Look at my marital settlement agreement. It's not my responsibility.
Ah,
Okay,
nice.
we can exclude that. So we've got to have that. And where that gets tricky is I've had people where they leap before they look. They get into contract for a home while at the same time they're going through the marital settlement agreement. Oh, the lawyers told me it would be done 2 weeks ago. No, it's going to be another 4 weeks. wait a minute, you're on contract on a house.
You
We've
gotta.
got all these dates, right? All these contractual obligations.
And
So
time is of the essence in this business.
yeah, yeah.
So
It,
let's say Tina, so she bought Bob out. Is her credit score affected? Will it drop because I mean because now she has a higher mortgage, or she's on her own, or maybe Bob was paying the mortgage?
yeah, not necessarily. So that's, I wouldn't say it's a misnomer as much as I think people might assume. Okay, my mortgage has gone up, my credit score is going to go down. The algorithms of the three credit repositories, TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, don't work that way. If you have a positive payment history, just because the mortgage is going up, that doesn't mean it's going to adversely impact your credit. So,
That's
um,
good. I
yeah,
like that bonus. That was a bonus question I had too. So, as I mentioned, we are in California
yeah,
and in a community property state.
true.
Does that affect things at all?
It does. It does. I mean, everything. It just depends on when it was bought. So, case in point, I had a couple where um, the husband had owned the home, and it was his sole and separate property before they got married. And so he'd had the home for about 10 years, and it was contentious because she really felt like she should have half the equity. Unfortunately for her, and what legally favors um, the person that's had the property is that they get to realize the equity that was there before they became a married couple. If you think about it, um, it's probably fair because they'd already accumulated equity, but it gets dicey. Other situations where there's been wealth that's been contributed by a parent or from an estate, and that having to be backed out because maybe that went into the house. Maybe there was a parent, a wealthy family that gave $1 million and they did a massive renovation. Okay, when was that given? How was that documented? So these are all things that are very specific to each situation. And usually, as a lender, depending on the complexities, we can say, okay, this is where we have to get the lawyers involved right away. There's just too many moving parts. So, I'd say it's very specific to each situation. One thing I wanted to mention, you and I've talked about this before, is I think for you as a realtor and myself as a lender, you know, the best thing that we can do, the most important thing we can do to show we care is really to show that we're neutral. We're your advocate, but we're going to be Switzerland here. We're not going to push one side because if we do that, there's not going to be a meeting of the minds. And that's how successful divorces happen. There has to be a meeting of the minds. People have to see a path forward. And so I always tell people, I'm going to give you solutions, but I'm not going to give you something where I know you're going to go to the other side and they're just going to say, oh, this is a sweetheart of a deal for you. So I think that's the biggest thing.
Right. You know, politically, I'm not red or blue. I'm purple.
I like it.
So there you go.
Yeah.
It's out there. Oh no.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of right there with you.
So let's say as you pointed out, I'm a realtor, and I'm friends with both these people, and they're going through divorce, and they both want me to represent them. Do you think it's better for them to have their own team, or could I pull it off? I'm not
That's a
talking dual agency. That's something that's not quite my favorite thing to do. I've done it before, didn't like it. And it is legal in California to represent the buyer of a home and the seller of a home at the same time. But we're talking just two people that are married and no longer want to be.
you know, I think if they confide in you and they have, you know, you have their trust and they know that you're going to be acting on their best behalf, then I think it's okay. I think where it gets dicey is okay, you don't know the couple that well, but this doesn't sound like that kind of situation. It sounds like you know them well. They've just decided it's time to part ways. So I don't think that's a bad thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you need to be discreet in all aspects anyway. And one thing that I'm really working towards is being a luxury realtor. And when you're dealing with people at a higher price point, discretion is super important to them.
Right.
And so I know to just keep it to myself.
Well, and to that scenario that you're talking about, I think that's where you're adding value because you know the couple and you know that they're kind of on the precipice of this difficult process they're going to go through, you can provide that discretion. You can say, hey, we're going to do this. It's going to be, you know, private, and we're just going to involve the professionals that are going to help navigate you through this.
Right. Professionals for sure. So that's all I had really. I
Okay.
just think that if you are going through the situation and you need to sell, you're refinancing, you're ready to buy a new home and just start fresh, having the right lender and the right realtor on your side and to protect your finances and your assets, we are here to give you peace of mind and to help you along the way. And with a glass of wine, possibly
Def-
afterwards.
Definitely a possibility to celebrate on your new journey.
Yes. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to Gold Country Homes with Lori McIntosh. And if you want to get some mail from us, Billy and I will send a postcard to you to keep you in touch with what's going on in the community. We're happy to help.
Yeah. And if you have any lending questions, DM me at Ask Lender Billy. Thanks.